Now, tonight, there could be new hope for nearly 3,000 people facing indeterminate prison sentences. MPs are voting tonight on amendments to the Victims and Prisoners Bills, which includes the resentencing of so-called IPP prisoners who are held indefinitely until parole boards approve their release. Well, it's a story that Sky's Alice Porter has been following this year, and she joins me now in the studio. So, Alice, let's start at the very beginning. What is an IPP?
An IPP is imprisonment for public protections, and they were designed to be given to serious offenders whose crimes didn't warrant a whole life sentence. So you'd be given a minimum term that you'd serve in prison, such as 2 years, but there'd be no maximum, so it was entirely open-ended. And it was hoped that it would give a degree of flexibility to see how somebody was progressing within prison, and they were really designed to be given to those serious offenders. The problem is they ended up being given out far more widely than initially anticipated, and in many cases they were given to people who had committed quite low-level crimes. So, for example, we know of somebody who's been held in prison in this country for 11 years for stealing a mobile phone. The government got concerned about this. In the end, they abolished the sentence in 2012. The problem is they didn't do this retrospectively. So that's why there are still almost 3,000 IPP prisoners in the country, and around 600 of them have been in prison almost a decade over the minimum term they were meant to serve. So this has led to a huge amount of outcry. We've had the UN Special Rapporteur for Torture. She has accused the British government of psychological torture in an interview exclusively with Sky News. And this has led to concerns within government as well. The Justice Select Committee last year, they conducted a very thorough inquiry into the situation, and their recommendation was that IPP prisoners should be resentenced. And I think really crucial to stress this, resentencing is not opening the doors. It would be going through each case individually, and there are some IPP prisoners who have been very dangerous, and they would continue to be in prison. But there are other people who would make much more sense to allow them to have some hope to work towards being released. Because, and we'll hear this coming from Cherrie in a little bit, but a lot of these prisoners have no sense of hope. And so, unsurprisingly, they have very poor mental health problems. Their suicide rate is more than 2.5 times the general prison population. And so Bob Neill, who chairs the Select Committee on this, he has tabled an amendment today calling on the government to re-sentence IPP prisoners, because Dominic Raab previously rejected those proposals.
OK, well, that's all unfolding tonight. There's a debate and then a vote. We will keep across it here on Sky News. Alice, I know you're following this for us very closely. Thank you. Well, one of the cases that Alice just mentioned there, one of the people facing an indeterminate sentence is Aaron. Now, Aaron Graham was 26 years old when he was sentenced to 2 years and 124 days in prison for committing grievous bodily harm. The victim was left with a broken cheekbone. That was back in 2005. And 18 years later, Aaron is still in prison. His sister, Cherrie, accepts that he deserved the time he was originally sentenced to, but now she says he doesn't pose a risk, and she's longing for the day that he will be released. Well, Cherrie Nichol joins me now here in the studio. Cherrie, hello.
Nice to meet you.
Just looking at that picture of you and your brother, Aaron, there, essentially he got into a fight.
Yeah.
And was charged and sentenced for GBH. Just over 2 years was his minimum sentence, but as part of this IPP, there was no maximum. Did you ever think you'd be in a situation where 18 years later he is still in prison?
Absolutely not. I don't think anybody would ever think they would be in that situation. To say 20 years, he was on 2 years remand, so he's been in 20 years, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking.
What has been happening in that time? Because presumably both you and Aaron, the rest of your family and friends thought, well, you know, it could be 2 years, maybe 5, not 18. How has he tried to get released in that time? What have you been doing? What have lawyers been doing? And what's been the blocker? What's been stopping his release?
I just think, like many IPPs, he hasn't had a voice. Mm-hmm. And there's been instances where he could have been progressed. Mm-hmm. Now he's done 4 years without a parole. So in that time he could have been progressed. And it seems to be that, you know, all the time there's new staff come in, or there's not enough measures, or there's not enough courses. It's inadequate. It's inadequate. So it was abolished, but it's all inadequate. And it seems to be that they're all forgotten and we're no further forward.
Yeah, well, the government did see that this measure was inadequate, as you put it, so they abolished it. But there are over 3,000. Aaron is one who's still in prison. And you mentioned there about there not being enough staff, not being enough courses, because if you're given an IPP, it's up to you to prove to the parole board that you're not a risk to the public anymore. But in order to do that, you have to tick certain boxes, go on courses that prove that you're rehabilitated. Has Aaron had access to those, or is that a gap in the system? Because, you know, Alice Porter, I was talking to her earlier, and she said some prisons say, we just don't have them here. We just don't have access to these courses.
They do get shipped around. They don't always have the courses. But at the end of the day, if obviously somebody's going on before them, they're not going to get on that course. And there's a certain tick box exercise, as you were, but not one size fits all. So, you know, it's when they've done so long over tariff, mentally, can they cope to do things? Is it realistic to keep punishing them and putting them through the courses and things like that? And then it gets to parole, and then they decide, you don't have to do this, you do have to do this. There's a massive, confusion. There's no clear understanding of what they have to do, because the parole boards are so different all the time, or the probation are different all the time. So
it's like moving the goalposts constantly.
They keep getting moved, and what happens is the mental health deteriorates so much that they just can't cope, and you can't expect somebody to cope in an environment that's absolutely crucifying them. And this is why the re-sentence is so important, because what it does, it paints a picture of services working together to progress them. Then we wouldn't have this. We're just stuck in the mud. And it's like, people like my brother, yes, he got into a fight, but he's been in there 20 years and he's sitting in a cell. Is sitting in the cell 23 hours a day. How is that going to rehabilitate anybody? You know.
What's it been like for him for the last 20 years? You've been with him every step of the way, as much as you can be, of course. You know, how often do you see him?
I try and see him once a month, always, and coming up to Christmas, because he's spending another Christmas, you know, and birthdays. I see him as much as I can, because he needs
what's the
that
change
support.
been in him in the last 20 years? Because obviously, you know, he did commit a crime.
Yeah.
He expected to serve time. You know, that's an accepted fact. But over the last 20 years, what's been the change?
Well,
what's this done to him?
He was in his 20s when he went in. He's now 43 years old. You know, he's sitting there as a man, and he's done a lot of inner work on himself. And he's sitting there reflecting. He's overly punished, like many of them. And as I'm sat here, I'm lucky that he's still here, to be fair, because there has been, you know, nearly 90 suicides because of it. And I don't want, the reason why I campaign like I do, and many of my friends, I don't want to lose my brother. So, you know, I admire him for his strength, because I don't think I could do it.
Well, look, he's very lucky to have a sister like you who's giving him a voice.
But it's hard.
Yeah, I would imagine it is. It's been, you know, 20 years that you've been talking about this and campaigning more recently. What do you want to see come from tonight? Because MPs are debating it within the next half an hour, voting on it. Why is it so vital that resentencing happens for those around 3,000 people on IPPs?
Because we want to prevent further suicides. We want the mental torture. There's the who want to free up prison spaces. Well, there's people in for petty crimes doing a life sentence. I said this months ago, before this was even implemented, and Sir Bob Neal's done an amazing job, and it's really stressful for him to be on front line and take that responsibility. But what I would like to see is a resentence, and it doesn't mean let's open the floodgates and let everybody home. It means that we're actually doing something about it and taking responsibility. And what we are doing is we're massively setting an organisation of what we're going to do about it. We need, no one's got any organisation. So before you know it, my brother's going to be in 25 years because he said and she said that he didn't do this cause, but he's on his knees. How can he rehabilitate an environment that makes him so sick and like others before him? So what I would like to see as a sister, for me and for all the IPPs, is that the resentencing comes into force on a case-by-case basis. We get a set amount of time of what we have to do to get them where they need to be. That's fair, you know?
Well, Cherrie, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us on behalf of your brother, Aaron, and we'll keep a close eye on this debate and this vote tonight, and we'll update Sky News viewers as to what happens. Thank you for taking the time to come and see us. Thank you,
welcome.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, if you've been affected by anything that we've just been discussing there, you can contact the Samaritans. 116123 is the number, or email joe@samaritans.org. Now on to something a little different.